Hello, James here. I wanted to finish up the rest of the story about what this young man went through, um, what he was taught as far as race relations coming from a white perspective point of view of America, and how some people like him who are white in the community, and I'm going to show you some stats and statistics. Where did this mindset come from, and how does it play in today with some people on the Caucasian side, and you're gonna hear it from them personally, and so you get a better understanding on how we're different, and it's real culturally open. So hopefully I'll be able to raise them up. But I did a part of the video about this, but hopefully I can get back to this video.
Kind of dissected and discussed in therapy.com. Use promo code
blah blah. The churches were not like legally segregated, but they were segregated to say the least.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, it's I just keep thinking about the confusion that must exist at that time, because this is,
Oh yeah.
like, these are when you're beginning to form core memories, and like this is the part of your childhood you can remember. Like, this is where your worldview begins to develop, and to be constantly fed this, I think, ultimately makes it even more amazing that we're speaking to you today. But what happened after that kind of blow up with your mom, and was that sort of a catalyst where you began to separate yourself from her, like, I don't know, the community? I don't know if you're still there, or, you know, what changes took place?
Well, I started interacting more with kids I went to school with. Like, instead of being in my room and like interacting with just my family or like people I've met online, I actually would go and walk the neighborhood and be like, "Hey, we're playing football. Do you want to play football?" I'm like, "Yeah." Or, "Do you want to play basketball?" And like, they were welcoming, and I was like, "This is nothing like what I was taught." I was always taught they were selfish, that they were like, this is a really screwed up term, and I don't even know if you want me to say it, but the way that they talked about them, they referred to a lot of the black people in my town as welfare warriors. Like that, like, and it doesn't seem that bad till you realize, oh, it's that bad. It's like, because it's not technically a slur, but it's really on the cusp. It's definitely negative, to say the least.
Right, but you just, like, so from your experiences, like, you kind of had the awareness to be like, all right, in here my family is saying all these negative things about black people, but when I'm actually out interacting, like, these are just people, like, and they're nice to me, and
Yeah.
they're like, my family is the one who's being wrong.
Well, sorry, not to do this too much, but to backtrack even further, when I lived in the projects when I was 6, I got jumped by 2 black guys and a Mexican kid, and not once did I think anything negative about the race. I was just like, these kids are mean to me. But I mean, they were like 6 and 7, so there was no. It was just like, I got beat up. I dusted myself off. I cried, and I dealt with it, and I moved on.
Yeah.
But like, it's 3-on-1 with a 6-year-old, so not very fun. But like, I didn't coordinate that with anything racial. I just thought these kids are mean, not this slur is mean, or this negative view of this person's like culture is mean. It was, these particular children are just mean.
Yeah. Which is the beauty of how children think, before you can sort of be corrupted, which it seems like your family was intentionally trying to do. But ultimately, you, I guess, sort of fact check what your family's teaching you in the real world, realizing, well, this doesn't make sense because it's not happening the way that they're telling me it should be. Do you remember any feelings that came with that? Like, was anger a part of this, or did you have any strong reactions to, realizing it wasn't true what your family was saying?
So it was anger because I knew what was right. I couldn't articulate it like I can today. I couldn't say, this is why this is wrong. You shouldn't say it. Like, to me, I just knew it was wrong. It's kind of like, you're a kid, hitting somebody in the head is wrong. Like you don't know why. Like, hey, there's consequences and there's injury. To you, it's just a mean thing to do. It's mean, and you don't really want to do it until someone makes you mad. But when you're a child, when you hit somebody, nothing really happens. You make someone cry or you upset somebody, and then that's the end of it. But when you get older, those punches become heavier and they become more dangerous, just like the words you use, the way you look at people, the way you think of people. That's the way I've always looked at it, which is, like when I was a kid, I was very impressionable, but I always questioned everything. I was like, why are we thinking like this? Why do you think like that? Why are you saying that? When I knew somewhere in the vicinity, I was like, that doesn't seem like a nice thing to say.
Right, and I mean, what would you kind of say to people? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people in this country that like grew up the same way that you did, and it sounds like you had your sister to kind of be like a beacon of, like a role model in a way. You like looked up to her because she was so smart and everything, and you're like, okay, and because she felt that way, it was like, okay, you're sort of validated, and like, why do I feel weird about this? Like, I go to school and these people are my friends, and my mother's saying that like they're the worst people in the world, but my sister is actually actually validating like my confusion, so I'm going to stick with that.
Well, I mean, my sister would like, all right, understand that. All right, so to give you an idea, I'm 5'9", and I'm like 240, so built kind of like a shit brick house. So my sister's 5'6", and she's probably like 200 pounds, and it's always been kind of like we've been kind of even in weight, and she would literally slap the shit out of me and be like, what'd you say? And I'd say, I said this, and she would then say, let me tell you why you should never say that and why it's wrong. Like if I was really out of line, not every little thing, but like if I said something really controversial, she would literally smack me in my ears would ring. But like, and then she would apologize. Like she didn't just do it. She was like, I'm sorry, but like, don't ever do that. Because she's like, it pissed me off beyond belief. And, but she also had anger issues too. We don't do that anymore. I mean, we're roommates now. So like, and we don't fight, we don't argue, we don't bicker, none of that. Like we always are on like a good terms.
So how did you get to where you are today, where you're able to talk about this and sort of understand, in hindsight, how terrible it was, the things that you were being taught?
So my sister was obviously a big influence, but then moving to Colorado. Now, before moving to Colorado, so here's what's crazy. I actually didn't get internet in home till like 2017. Because we were that poor, and I just happened to get a rec settlement, so I was able to finally get internet in the house and like a little treat for myself, So I finally had unlimited high-speed internet, so I could Google anything, anytime. So if I heard something controversial, I would look it up. If I would listen to comedians who weren't just white and Southern, like I listened to Eddie Griffin, I would listen, before he kind of lose his mind for a little bit, or I listened to Cat Williams, or I'd listen to Kevin Hart, and I'd listen to their perspective of the world, and then I'd listen to documentaries and speeches of other, different ethnicities, like world leaders, how they perceived America and white people, and I was like, but never once. And unless they were extremists, which everyone does have extremists, but it's very rare in other cultures. Like white people have the most extremists I've ever seen, like in person. Like it sounds crazy, but like that is to me a cold stone fact. But a lot of them, whenever they talked about how negatively they were impacted by like white people, they never talked down of them. They never called them slurs. They never said anything really negative. They just said, here is what we have as fact. Here's how it affected these people. And here's why we're trying to fix it. And I'm like, that's a valid argument because it's not slander. It's not them being angry and bitter. It's fact. It's truth. And I opened my mind up so I changed my mindset from I learned one fact so I'm right, which is I learned a fact that is a fact today, but it may not be in fact tomorrow.
Yeah,
I'll constantly am allowing my brain to take in new information, provided evidence.
No, and that's cool to hear because it's sort of this like real-time understanding of your mind working, where you are getting you're getting such an extreme side of the spectrum, and then for you to kind of go out throughout your journey to then gather information for yourself, and then just sort of have this filter through for you to kind of understand, like, well, this is my truth. Like, I'm not just going to take what I'm fed of how a type of person is or how the world works, or this generalization. I'm going to gather as much information as I can. I'm going to question that, and I'm going to, find what I believe the truth to be. And that's really cool to hear that process.
Yeah. The way that I would, the way I would phrase it is that what it is that I changed my mindset from, I no longer listen to argue, I listen to learn and reciprocate.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really important too. Like in any, conversation, not just about race, but anything really, is like that's important. Like an important mindset to have, and
especially in an age of misinformation where it's so easy to get things that are not based in fact, and people just form their opinions and worldview based on a theory or something that they hear without going through that process, or even just an unwillingness to hear any other side.
Yeah, it's like a lot of the times, the way that the way I phrased it in high school, and I remember one of my teachers loved it, is I was like, being stupid is something that happens to you, and being ignorant is a choice of something that is happening around you.
Okay, yeah, I understand where you're going with that. But
you have to choose that, in my opinion.
Yeah, of course, to be ignorant and not try to educate yourself. Like a lot of people, you get to arguments with them, and they're just like, they're not interested in like the actual facts. They kind of have their opinion already, and like you were saying before, someone's listening just to argue, not to like learn or try to gain any new perspective. But yeah, I think this conversation is super important, and we appreciate you taking the time and talking to us today, because obviously racism is like a big thing in the world and in this country especially, and it's good. It's like, it's interesting to hear the perspective of someone of like, this is how it actually happens in these small towns where people were just raised a certain way, and then they become like this, and then they try to do it to their children, and sometimes it sticks and sometimes it doesn't. I think I'm optimistic that we can get better at it, and educate people with platforms like this and stories like yours. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us tonight.
Yeah.
Y'all notice how the news is using the Middle East to blind us? They keep taking down this video so y'all can't pocket this 16 grand, but I'm gonna...
But I think it's the same video, but
White identity in America is rooted in ideology, not biology, as evidenced by the historical evolution of whiteness. Embark on a revealing exploration of US states where the white population exceeds 90%, uncovering the historical, economic, and societal factors that contribute to this demographic landscape. From the legacies of early settlers to the shadows of racism and, at times, white supremacy, delve into the intricate elements, shaping homogeneity in these regions. Join us on a journey through the nuanced narratives of legacy, opportunity, exclusion, and the undercurrents of white supremacy, shedding light on the untold stories behind states with a predominantly white population. Nebraska, where 86% of the population is white, boasts diverse ancestry groups with prominent German, Irish, English, Czech, Swedish, and Polish communities. Noteworthy for hosting the largest Czech American and non-Mormon Danish American population nationwide, Nebraska in 2016 led the nation in welcoming refugees per capita. However, the state is marred by a troubling trend, being the only one to observe a rise in its black incarceration rate since 2006. With racial disparities persisting, Nebraska ranks 10th nationally in the disproportionately high black prison incarceration rate, raising concerns about equity within its criminal justice system. Montana has an 86.7% white population, primarily consisting of European Americans, with Germans leading and complemented by farmers of Irish, Scots, and English descent. This diverse ancestry contributes to the state's significant white population. Montana, known for its breathtaking natural beauty, abundant outdoor activities, strong community bonds, and a more relaxed pace of life, offers an appealing lifestyle. However, challenges include limited job opportunities, economic diversity, isolation from major cities, and harsh winters. Iowa, with an 88.7% white population, traces its predominantly white demographic to historical factors such as early European settlement, limited immigration, and its rural character. The state exhibits a rich mix of ancestral origins, with prominent proportions of 35% Germans, 13.5% Irish, 8.2% English, 5.8% Americans, and 5% Norwegians. Germany's political repression and economic hardships after the failed revolutions of 1848 prompted migration abroad, with Iowa's fertile land attracting German and Irish farmers. The state's appeal lies in affordable living, strong communities, natural beauty, low crime rates, and a stable economy, centered around agriculture. However, limited job opportunities, lower educational attainment, fewer cultural options, and conservative politics are identified as some drawbacks. Iowa ranks 25th in the country for hate crimes and holds the highest racial disparity in its prison population. Utah, with an 88.7% white population, is characterized by a predominantly Mormon demographic, where approximately 70% of population consists of immigrants from Britain, Canada, Denmark, and Norway. Originating from religious persecution in 19th century, these settlers shaped the state's initial demographics, resulting in a predominantly white population. Utah's high birth rate, influenced by cultural and religious values in Latter-day Saints Church, contributes to its demographic prevalence. The state's rural character, with a substantial population in smaller towns, further supports the existing white majority. Unlike states such as California or Texas, Utah did not witness significant immigration post-settlement, solidifying its enduring white demographic composition. Utah ranks 21st in the country for hate crimes.
I've been making $15,000 a month with just 2 apps on my phone. And I don't know if you can see this, but it's called Fiverr and Crick.
First in the country for hate crimes. Idaho, with a 90.7% white population, attributes its predominantly white demographic to historical settlement by Americans of English and German ancestry. The state, rich in white supremacist history, unfortunately continues to grapple with high instances of hate crimes. Its predominantly rural nature, with a significant population residing in small towns and rural areas, contributes to a less diverse environment than urban counterparts. Idaho's strong religious identity, with a substantial portion identifying as Protestant or Mormon, further skews the demographic towards whiteness. Unlike some western states, Idaho has not experienced a significant recent influx of international immigrants, solidifying its predominantly white population. Wyoming, with a 90.7% white population, derives its predominantly white demographic from historical settlement by British, Germans, Italians, Basque, and Greeks in 1870. The cowboy state's limited major urban centers and economic opportunities have contributed to this demographic composition. Despite being nicknamed the Equality State with an official motto of equal rights, Wyoming has a history of racism, highlighted by being the first to pass a hate crimes law. While strides have been made in civil rights, Wyoming acknowledges its imperfections in fostering diversity, emphasizing the ongoing need for inclusivity and equity. West Virginia, with a 90.4% white population, finds its predominantly white demographic rooted in the history of Scottish, Irish, and German settlers. The state's isolation, marked by a stagnant population and limited immigration, contributes to its lack of diversity. Historically, the rugged terrain discouraged plantation agriculture and slavery, aligning with West Virginia's anti-slavery stance during the Civil War. Despite this, racial attitudes mirrored those of the broader South. Presently, the state grapples with racism complaints, primarily in employment, while the Eastern Panhandle witnesses a growing Hispanic population. Business leaders acknowledge the advantages of diversity, signaling a potential shift in the state's demographic landscape. With a 91.3% white population, New Hampshire's demographic is primarily composed of individuals of European descent. New Hampshire's racial homogeneity poses challenges for newcomers, fostering isolation without established communities. This lack of diversity complicates employer efforts to recruit and retain workers from varied ethnic backgrounds. Systemic racism persists, evident in disproportionately high arrests and incarceration rates for African Americans. According to the New Hampshire Department of Safety, African Americans face nearly 3 times the arrest rate and over 5 times the likelihood of imprisonment compared to those of European descent. The state ranks 3rd nationally in racial pay gaps, with workers of color earning less and encountering fewer promotional opportunities. Consequently, African Americans in New Hampshire endure a higher poverty rate, 1 in 5, surpassing any other demographic group as per latest census data. Vermont, with a 91.3% white population, features a significant French influence, constituting the largest ancestral and ethnic group, including Irish and English contributions. Vermont's demographic homogeneity is rooted in historical immigration dynamics, often framed by the push and pull theory. In its history, there was no compelling pull for African Americans, no jobs, cultural attractions, or significant African American presence. Vermont lacked the plantation economy that drew African Americans elsewhere. Post-Civil War, economic constraints prevented former slaves from reaching Vermont. Industries favored low-wage Irish and French-Canadian labor over African Americans. Migration was easier for these groups. Italians, Greeks, Poles, and Swedes also contributed to the diverse labor force. Presently, Vermont's rural landscape lacks large factory farms, recruiting Latino labor. Despite being rural, Vermont boasts robust civil rights laws, making it an increasingly attractive destination for non-white individuals. Maine, with a 92% white population, reflects a heritage of European colonization, particularly influenced by English, Scottish, and Irish immigrants, who have significantly shaped its demographic composition. Maine's prevailing white demographic is rooted in historical racism, white nationalism, and supremacy. distant from the slave trade hub, Maine's economy post-Civil War excluded African Americans from jobs in forestry and industries. Discrimination in factories, anti-miscegenation laws, and racial tensions deepened segregation. In 1912, the eviction of Malaga Island's black community serves as a poignant example of the pervasive historical racism and exclusion that marked Maine's past. This legacy, combined with white supremacist ideologies, has contributed to Maine's enduring whiteness.
Local credit unions and community banks are the heart of Main Street. So when these institutions are united in a...
Today we're looking at the least diverse big cities in the United States. American cities are like big, bustling, all-you-can-eat buffets of diversity. And guess what? They've been piling more onto their plates in recent years. The U.S. Census shows that nearly 70% of our biggest cities have turned into even more of a melting pot since 2012. Now, don't get too excited or don't get too worked up. The change isn't really like going from black and white TV to 4K overnight. We're talking a modest 3% boost on average in diversity from 2012 to 2022. But here's where it gets interesting. Some cities really spice things up, like Detroit, for instance. It was kind of like this plain oatmeal of diversity. But over the last decade, they really spiced it up with some honey and some brown sugar and maybe some raisins. And their largest demographic went from 83% of the population to 75%. The people from the Pew Research Center, who probably spend a lot of time looking at graphs and charts and have easels, say demographic change is slow but constant, like a glacier. Despite the changes over the last 10 years, some cities' largest demographic stayed top dog by a serious amount. And that's what we're looking at today, the least diverse big cities in the United States, where one demographic has a much higher percentage of the population than everyone else. Now, one thing before we get rolling, I want to explain. Some of these stats won't add up to 100%. That's because there's certain races that overlap that people claim they're both. And in the census, it usually ends up that most cities will be about 110% of everything. You know, it's kind of weird. I didn't want to bog down the video with a whole bunch of numbers, so it is what it is. Just know that some of these will be over 100% when you add up the percentages. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis, Tennessee is a city known for its rich cultural diversity, reflecting a tapestry of traditions and heritages. This diversity is deeply rooted in its history as a pivotal center for blues music, soul, rock and roll, which brought together African American, white, and other cultural influences. Read up on the music history of Memphis. It is very interesting. The city's demographics showcase a significant African American population along with a growing Latino, Asian, and other ethnic communities. Memphis's diversity is not just ethnic, it's also cultural. There is a blend of rural and urban traditions, southern hospitality, and a pretty serious art scene. Memphis has a population of about 650,000 residents. The entire metro area has about 1.3, but we're only focusing on the cities. And of that 650,000, about 67.7% are black, 29% is white, and then Hispanic 6.9 and on down. Go to any restaurant in Memphis that's not some sort of franchise operation, and you'll see the diversity there. Number 9, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. An estimated 4,000 to 5,000 families settled in western Pennsylvania between 1768 and 1770. Of these settlers, about a third were English Americans, another third was Scotch-Irish, and the rest were Welsh, German, and a few other things like Polish. They didn't branch out much past that. Pittsburgh was once a melting pot for European immigrants drawn to its booming steel industry. The city has evolved, but not very much in the diversity department. You'll probably start to see change in Pittsburgh in the next few decades. They've turned into quite the little tech hub. And when you got tech, you draw people in from all around the world. Now, I'm not saying Pittsburgh is void of any kind of ethnic restaurants or anything like that. They have them, but when you compare it to other cities their size, they're not nearly as plentiful. 67.8% of Pittsburgh is white, 23.1% is black, Asian is 5.6%, Hispanic 3.4%, and everyone else is under 1%. Number 8, Louisville, Kentucky. Louisville, Kentucky has a pretty interesting history, dating back to its early days of the late 1700s. It was founded by George Rogers Clark, who was a big name in the American Revolutionary War. He and a bunch of his settler buddies floated on down the Ohio River and landed at where Louisville, Kentucky is today. A lot of those settlers were Scot-Irish, Welsh, and some Germans. Like most of the cities on this list, their demographics back then aren't too far from what their demographics are today. Where Louisville is right now was, back in the day, a great spot for trading and travel. It was also a great spot for flooding, so they had to deal with that. These were some pretty tough people back in the day. Louisville has about 633,000 residents, with about 70% being white or Caucasian. 24.5% are black or African American. Hispanic and Asians show up on there too, but everyone else is underneath 1%. Number 7, Lexington, Kentucky. Lexington has a pretty cool history. Way back in the 1770s, a bunch of adventurous folks from Virginia decided to explore the unknown lands of what is now Kentucky. These early settlers were a pretty brave bunch because, let's face it, setting up camp in the wilderness back in the day was not a walk in the park. They named the area after the Battle of Lexington in Massachusetts. It was a big deal during the American Revolution. Imagine trying to put your town together, you don't know what to name it, and then you find out all this fighting for your freedom is going on, basically a world away for them, but in their own country, or what would become their country. So, name it Lexington. The early settlers of Lexington were English, Scot-Irish, Welsh, German, French, Dutch, and even Swedish. And if you look at the demographics of the place now, they kind of thought, you know what, if it's working, why don't we keep it this way? Now, their diversity has gotten a little bit more interesting over the decades and centuries, but they haven't strayed far from their beginnings. Lexington has a population of about 320,000 residents, and it has never had a down decade. I mean, they've always gained population throughout its history. I've been to Lexington a few times, and for a good-sized city, it's very quiet. It's very much a small-town vibe to this place. I mean, the entire metro area of Lexington only has about 517,000 residents. But of the city's residents, 76.6% are white or Caucasian, 15.2% are black or African American, Hispanics are 7.4%, Asians are 4.0%, and everyone else is below 1%. Number 6, Portland, Oregon. Yeah, this one's kind of a no-brainer. Even though Portland's liberal and all that other stuff, there's not many ethnic people that live here. Portland, Oregon started off as a trading post and a ferry for pretty much white settlers coming to Oregon. The state tried to have their constitution say that it had to be white. Yeah, that was a thing. Sure, we're talking the, late 1800s they did that, but kind of tells you where their head was back in the day. Right now they say Portland's population is about 652,000 residents, with about 2.5 living in the metro area. I'm skeptical of those numbers. I mean, half the city lives in tents, and if you're going door to door trying to count population, you gotta knock on some doors. Have you ever tried to knock on a tent flap? It's impossible. The Oregon Trail ended not too far from Portland, and if you know anything about the Oregon Trail past what you learned on the game, it was nothing but Europeans. Of the 652,000 people that live in Portland, Oregon, 78.1% are white or Caucasian, 9.3% are Hispanic, Asians are 9.0%, and African Americans or black 6.3%. Everyone else is under 1%. Number 5, Omaha, Nebraska. If you didn't know Omaha, Nebraska was lacking in diversity, you've never been to Omaha, Nebraska. Get off the plane there. You'll see. The land that would become Omaha, Nebraska actually became part of the U.S. when Thomas Jefferson nailed the Louisiana Purchase deal in 1803. Back then, the central U.S. was pretty much a huge, mysterious open space, and no...
Oh, sorry about that. My tablet got hot. My tablet got hot. Well, but this is a different perspective from stats and from people themselves, and this ain't coming from black people. This is coming from white people. So they're telling you their self. So I wanted to dedicate this because someone can't use that verse psychology and say you're being racist. not when it's someone that looked like the person who's telling it they self. And that was the whole purpose of me playing this video, because I bet you there's some people that come across me and say, oh, he's probably teaching Conquer and Divide, and they look at my face and say, see, they go to black people always saying something. I think they make a big deal out of nothing. It's like, okay, you going, so it's like, okay, I'm gonna show you that, and many people like us trying to show you, like, America hasn't changed. It has a history of it. And so they had to come and tell you that they sell how the way some places, and they still want it to be like that. And this is going to be one of the things that's going to spark the Civil War, is because white people, when they get all these other people coming up into them and push them off into them areas from the border, that's what's going to cause it. And I do believe that, because you're going to change the dynamic of, and you're going to see how some people really feel. Some people really think about diversity and inclusion and everything, and it's like you're going to see the real racism come out, and it's going to be nationality versus nationality in these last days, because it's like what I say with some people, that race matters, culture and nationality matters, and some people look at it like that. And particularly when they're trying to move up into them areas like that, they want to come outside, even though they may not get along with the people that look like them. They'd rather see the people that look like them. They will go by any means necessary to control it. And this is America. They want to keep the diversity among the poor, but you can't really do that. But certain demographic of people wants it to keep it that way, and keep us fighting among the people that's non-white. But they want to keep. That ain't no problem. Let it be them. We out here in Wyoming somewhere, and yeah, so you have to see it for yourself. And like this thing with race is real, and it coming from white people, and it's like it's coming from people who are Caucasian. This is what they were raised to think. This is what some of them were raised to feel. And I admire the ones that come forward and say, hey, yeah, this is what I was taught, and but I had to change my mindset. But there's a lot of white people haven't accepted and changed their mindset. And this is going to prove what I'm saying. And
Are you watching this?
There's another person gonna tell you. So people can't say, well, they race divide. Well, what do you do with the people that look like you telling the truth? We race divide then? Why don't they let the past go? Because
a TikToker by the name of I Am 10 Toes spoke out about breaking generational racism among his folks. Check it out.
I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret about white people. Every single white person knows somebody who is racist. Racist towards black people, racist towards Spanish people. We all know somebody. It might be our family member, it might be a distant relative, it might be a coworker, it might be an old friend. But we all know somebody. Personally, I come from a whole family of racist people. Yeah, my entire family is Republican too, okay? My dad's parents are racist, and my mom's parents are racist. Okay? So, I'm literally going against everything by talking about this. I am putting my own life on the line by speaking about this, and that's what we all should be doing. See, we could have ended this a long time ago, but people like my mom listened to these racist comments that their parents were making and didn't speak out against it. They kept their mouths shut, or they agreed with them silently, But they didn't do anything about it. They continue to let this be passed on generation after generation. Oh, my mom never told me or taught me any racist ideologies. She continued to let it happen because she didn't speak out against it when her parents were talking about it, or my dad's parents were talking. So if you are against racism and you are against discrimination and you're a white person, you need to speak out about it. Otherwise, you are allowing this to continue generation after generation, and you are just as much a part of the problem as anybody else.
So yes, you heard him right. He said that white people could have stopped racism a long time ago by speaking out against it. He brought up his mother as a perfect example. He said while she may not necessarily be racist, but she allowed racism to continue within, her parent circle and her husband, which is his dad, I guess, by not speaking out against it. And he says if you're quiet about it as white people, you are pretty much condoning it as well. And so apparently he's going about breaking that and speaking out against it. And he is absolutely right. Racism could have ended a long time ago if white people would have stopped it, because oftentimes we in the black community get charged with stop racism. Oh, we have to do our part to stop racism, but we know we can't stop racism because we didn't start racism, and we know that black people have very little control of anything in this country, let alone stopping racism, right? So I agree with him 100%. It's going to take his folks to stop racism. But see, the problem is, we know that they benefit greatly from racism. They always have, right? They've always benefited from racism, which is why they are where they are in society, due to the racism that they created. Will white people ever speak out wholeheartedly as, a majority against racism? Probably not. But in the meantime, we as black people can do our part, and that's not vote for racism. Because if y'all notice, he said most of his family are Republican, but it's not just the Republicans, it's the Democrats too that are very racist. So we can stop voting for racism, and we can stop spending with racism as much as we can, right? And start pouring into our black-owned businesses so that we can build something of our own. But again, I agree with him. It's on them to stop racism. Will they ever do that? Nah, probably not. But we should do all we can on.
There is one simple fungus hack anyone can use to flush out nail fungus without apple cider vinegar.
Clearly, America is not a racist country.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard the story of a white teen trying to drown a black teen. Well, this is the white teen, and I'm not going to lie to y'all, I'm not shocked that he's some chubby white boy. Usually, these are the ones. These are the ones that are always causing the problems in school. They are. Even when I was coming up, some of the bullies that were there were just like this dude. They were always some chubby white boy. And if you remember, a few years ago, I did a video, and it was this old chubby white boy, looking like Fred Flintstone, on a video, and he was using all these racial slurs, and come to find out, the black teens were getting the girls that he wanted, and that's what that whole thing was about. So, and honestly, I am not shocked that this is some fat white boy. So let's get into the video. Not surprising. So, a 14-year-old charged with attempted murder after allegedly throwing rocks and trying to drown his black teen friend. No, you don't do that to a friend. That's not a friend. He's an adversary, not a friend. So a 14-year-old teenager named John Sheeran has been charged with attempted murder following the alleged racially motivated attack over the summer in Chatham, Massachusetts. The incident occurred on July 19th when Sharon allegedly tried to drown a black teenager who was not identified in a pond while hurling racial slurs at him. The victim claimed he was the subject of racial abuse, with Sharon reportedly calling him George Floyd, referencing an African-American man whose tragic death sparked a nationwide protest against police brutality back in May of 2020. To make matters even more distressing, however, it has been reported that Sharon allegedly had hurled racial slurs at an Asian that very same day, showing clear signs that there seems to be a certain behavior pattern. Yeah, he's learning this from his household. Okay, if you want to know why this 14-year-old is like this, look 14. No further than his parents. So,
14.
Once in the water, the juvenile defendant proceeded to pull on the victim's life jacket and submerge him underwater for 4 to 5 times. So he pushed him underwater 4 to 5 times, causing the victim's breathing distress, prosecutor said. The third juvenile laughed at the victim during the attempted drowning, referring to the victim as George Floyd. The attack continued as the juvenile defendant swarmed underneath the victim and attempted to grab his feet to again pull the victim underwater. So he's already a criminal, y'all. This little chubbit is already a criminal. He's already a criminal. See, it was all funny and laughs and giggles when him and his friends were out there doing this to this child. But now that he's being charged with attempted murder, I bet you it's not so funny anymore. I bet you him and that alleged buddy that was laughing, I bet you they're not laughing anymore. And they really need to get his friend for just standing there laughing. So anyway, this appalling act of violence highlights a deeply rooted issue of racism that still persists in our society. Yes, via his parents. Because that's where he got it from. The fact that such an incident involves a young teenager is particularly concerning. It's not to me. Many of us that went through your lame-ass school system, we saw it then. So it raises questions about the influences and environments that shape the attitudes and behaviors of our youth. And why do y'all always talk like you don't know where it came from? Y'all know where it comes from. For real. It is crucial for parents, educators, and society as a whole to address these issues early on and promote inclusivity, understanding, and acceptance. Y'all don't teach that in the household. You teach racism in the household. That's why John Sheeran and teens like him exist. Get out of here with this acceptance and all that crap, because y'all don't teach that.
Why shop Motor Trend certified vehicles in Reichert? They've all been inspected by certified technicians, upgraded.
Yep. So this is what happened, but subconsciously, people don't, you have to show it and show how the reality of it is. This stuff is reality. That it's been going on and on and on and on and on for a while, and it's not going away. It's passed. Racism is passed from generation after generation. There are people being racist. So, and then you see the physical. Then it's the systematic racism part of it. There's a system racism, and it goes into medical, and it goes into other things, and people don't want to address it because they want to keep denying it. They want to take it out of history books. If we don't talk about it, let us control what we can talk about. But even if you can take it out of school, the racism, the spirit of racism is still in the generations, because some people are going to perpetuate in their own households what they formulate a different groups of people. So no matter what you do, no matter if they took it out and try to so-called teach in all 20, 30, 40 states, the racism in America will always perpetuate because it starts in the household. Then starts with people having formulated opinions about other people. And that's the truth. Now, he's 14 years old. You see how the way he jumps from one generation after another generation after another? And you hear what the one man said in the beginning of the video. He was taught this. And his mother didn't do it, and they knew that he knew what was right, what was wrong. But some people choose not to. And I personally, throughout my childhood, like Lisa Guevara, I've counted that stuff myself when I was 14, 15 years old. And I wasn't a bully. I wasn't go around calling white kids out their name. You know? You're just trying to get along to survive. But to some people subconsciously, the environment is what they raise. And so, what some other people don't understand, even when you go into those areas, there among a majority demographic of people, there are some white people that have that, have that. They're not used to this, and so they formulate opinions. Sometimes they do it sarcastically through jokes. Sometimes they do things that they're not normally around, because it all started among them when the different groups of demographic of people. It started with the Poles, the Italians, the Irish, and on. So once they're out of the picture, they're like, well, we ain't focus on you no more. Let's go on the blacks, the Hispanics, and other people. America was built on it, and there was always tribal stuff in America. There were always race riots. And one of the main groups that was always in the midst of the race riot, the run of death and destruction and torture, were African Americans. I mean, there were some Native Americans, and then once in a while, there were, in different parts of the country, there were Latinos. But majority of the country that was going through racism was black people. And everywhere, and I can show you in every part of the United States, in the history of going back all the way back to the 17th, 16th century, that is even all the way from then till now, and there are still stories coming out of racism among kids, even in going to schools across this country. The spirit of it is still here. People, they don't want to change, and I had to show this video to show that this is coming from white people, because there might be some white people who come across this video and say, there go another black person. Now you got to hear from someone that look like you saying, yeah, we have an issue, we have a problem. Yeah, we were taught this way. Yeah, we were shown. We formed our opinions this way, and no one did say anything, and no one did do something. Why is that, Jane? Because nobody wanted to be isolated and cut off. Because you get cut off, then you the end lover, and things like that. Then, in which being called that means you denigrate to the people that they call the lower term. So you don't want to become the lower term, and that's the reason why some white people get backlash for speaking out. And even Phil even said it, that even they do. But this country is going to be like this until Jesus Christ stepped his foot on this earth. That's just the way it is. And even though we have every demographic of people soon going to be coming in this country, the America is still bloodshed and like it is in other parts of the world. That's one of the things that was bloodshed is because of racism. Racism, systematic racism that the government allowed to. And now it hit every other arena in our country. Even, I mean, from you name it, whether it was in the military, whether it was in schools, whether it was hospital and medical, whether it was the judicial system, every other area. It's like someone can do something when it comes to justice. The black get higher than the white, doing the same crime, doing the same thing. But why is that? It's subconscious racism that is in among us, because some people really deep down look for the demographic of the people. They really don't want slip slide, because justice ain't truly justice. The only justice we will ever have is the Most High God. It will bring the true justice among everybody. That's the only we're gonna have true justice. But in this, I don't believe we'll ever see true justice, because subconsciously we will always see race, even though we don't want to see race. This has been proven in the past, how the way the IQ test, when they would do this back years ago, they would show different demographics of people of what person likely you would think do the crime, what person would commit this kind of crime. Subconsciously, people saw race. So imagine that. So it's always going to be here, and some people don't like to address it, and so therefore they want to scrub and get rid of it, and basically bind it. But it's not going to be bound, because when you bind something and hold something down, it's going to be like a powder cake. It's going to explode from the inside. So, but see how, and see even, and the reason why those states was, when you live in those states where it's predominantly people that look like you, if you were white, you're not going to understand what diversity is, because even though it's a nice, and it's some nice areas, but there's also have issues too, because even in the predominantly white area, you have issues. You have drug problems, poverty problems. Oh yeah, but people resort to doing whatever they got to do. The same people you would say someone of color would do. Then what does it come? Then what it comes down to? It's a property issue. But people subconsciously don't want to see that. The court system, your politicians, and everybody don't want to see it like that. But when you put it in front of the world stage, that's why I said go back to January 6th of 2020. That's your perfect example. That's why it had to be like a powder cake to show you what you see happen on January 6th, 2021, when selected of the two, when Donald Trump and Biden and everything, when you see all those people, that's them, the descendants of the people who, when they didn't get things what they want, that's what they would do. And across the country, riot and tear up courthouses. And see, that spirit is still in the land in this generation. When you go back in your history book, look at how the way in American history, look how the ways political, racial, and right, and they would go and storm, even go kill politicians, kill police officers. America always been like this. It's always been like this, and this is what we don't like to talk about when it comes to social issues. And it was based around changing laws. Now it's the same. It's the same spirit come back around. Nothing new is up under the sun. Go look at your history. January 6, 2021, it was the same thing they did back in the 1900s. And they would do this to white and black. They would lynch them up on the pole, and they would lynch them and shoot them in the street. The same violent behavior is in America. That's why I said that Americans was founded on blood and violence, believe it or not. That's the truth. So there you have it. All right then, ladies and gentlemen, Another History Learned. Next time, like and subscribe, share it with your friends, and hope I can educate somebody on a different perspective of what this country will and continue to be, and why you must pray and stay in spirit. All right, then, be blessed. Till next time, take care.